Now, there are many benefits of the Democrats pulling off a coup against Joe Biden and installing Kamala Harris. First and foremost, despite what many people will tell you in the media, I am of the belief that Joe Biden was actually a much stronger candidate than Kamala, not a weaker candidate. So this actually increases the chances of the evil orange man winning. But another benefit that people don't talk about, they don't highlight enough, although it is becoming more and more obvious, is the fact that California Governor Gavin Newsom is absolutely livid. And in fact, it is my belief that Gavin Newsom is rooting for the evil orange man to win, because the Democrats clearly and obviously don't care about this ridiculous talking point related to saving democracy. They care about their own power, their own personal political ambitions. And the fact of the matter is, Kamala winning in 2024 ruins Gavin Newsom's chances of becoming the president. And that's what I want to talk about today. This little clip from Pod Save America and a bunch of articles that really go to show you how power hungry and phony these politicians actually are. But before we get into that, I want to say thank you to everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
How are you feeling about the switch?
I mean, the switch. Now, we went through a very open process, a very inclusive process. It was bottom up. I don't know if you know that. Yes, that's what I've been told to say.
Yes.
So this clip of Gavin Newsom from Pod Save America, which I believe is a podcast that's run by a bunch of people from the Obama administration, went viral because obviously Gavin Newsom is joking about what is in fact a joke of a process that managed to get Kamala Harris installed as the presidential candidate, despite the fact that she received precisely 0 votes as the presidential candidate. Now, we've talked about this before. I described it as a coup. There is reporting that the Obamas and high-level Democrats threatened to 25th Amendment Biden if he didn't hand over the nomination. And all of that is interesting and covered in another video. And I would definitely recommend you guys watch that, read into that however much you want. But the fact of the matter is, Joe Biden clearly and obviously had major health issues. Kamala Harris has major political issues in that she could not win the Democratic primary, and rather than actually getting Joe Biden out before the primary so that they can actually have an election to pick their candidate, they decided, and I believe strategically, to lie about Biden this whole time up until the point where they pressured him out of the race. And these guys are making fun of the fact that they promised an open process on Twitter, and then 30 minutes later, Kamala Harris was deemed the nominee because she secured the major folks that she needed in order to make sure that nobody could run against her, which I find to be absolutely hilarious, again, considering she got 0 votes, and this entire Democratic campaign is all about saving democracy.
How are you feeling about the switch?
I mean, the switch. Now, we went through a very open process, a very inclusive process. It was bottom up. I don't know if you know that. Yes, that's what I've been told to say.
Yes, it was a blitz primary, I believe is what they called it.
It's a very, very fast blitz. I think it was a blink primary, so we call that.
Oh, a 30-minute convention.
Yeah.
Between a tweet and another tweet.
It's amazing how it happened.
Yeah, it's been amazing.
Now, some losers, low-life scumbags will say, Sean, the Democratic Party is a private organization and they can do whatever they want. So you can't say that this was a coup or anything sinister, because technically they don't even have to have primaries. And sure, that's 100% true. They do not have to have primaries. They can replace their nominee even if the other guy gets 84% of the vote like Joseph R. Biden did. And by the way, the Republican Party can do so as well. But the fact of the matter is, you have a democratic process for choosing your nominee. Joe Biden won that democratic process. Kamala Harris is not on the ticket. Remember, the presidential candidate picks the VP candidate, so Biden could have replaced Kamala at any point in time, and that would not have been against any norms and traditions or anything like that. And they decided to toss that out, not have a process, and replace him with a more unpopular candidate. And Gavin Newsom making fun of that, showing us what we already know right to our faces, is quite notable for a number of reasons. Now, to be 100% clear, the reason why Gavin Newsom is pulling back the curtain, making fun of Kamala Harris, joking around about this, giving us a little bit of peek into the truth of the process, has nothing to do with him being wedded to the ideas of democracy, a fair process, or anything of the sort. If Gavin Newsom could have stolen the nomination from Joe Biden, he would have happily done so, and the only reason why he's upset at Kamala's nomination in particular is because her nomination essentially locked in the fact that he has no political future if she were to win. First and foremost, Gavin Newsom cannot be the VP ticket for Harris's campaign because that would mean sacrificing the electoral votes from California, which is what is done when both people on the ticket are from the same state. But more importantly, Newsom is concerned about his own political future. Remember, the next gubernatorial election is 2026. Newsom will not be running. He will be termed out, meaning that January of 2027, he will be somebody without an office, and that is going to keep him from relevancy. Unless, of course, that happens to align pretty well with the 2028 presidential campaign, which Newsom has clearly and obviously been revving himself up for, preparing for, because he wants to be president of the United States of America. And to be clear, a lot of people are saying that Newsom wanted to replace Joe Biden on the ticket. I actually don't believe that's the case. I think he would have calculated that as too big of a risk for his political career, having about 100 days to throw together a campaign, and he didn't want to get the nomination in some weird way like that when he can clearly and obviously grab the nomination in his mind by winning the primary outright in 2028. And by the way, this would have been true whether Biden won in 2024 or if Trump wins in 2024, because Gavin's ideal situation is being able to win the primaries in 2028 and not have an incumbent anywhere in sight for him to go up against, because in his mind, and by the way, there is some truth to this, there is an incumbent advantage, this is the best path forward for somebody who wants to get into the White House. But Harris completely messes that up. If she were to win in 2024, she is the presumed nominee going into 2028, and Gavin is going to have to wait all the way till 2032. By the way, this would be after 3 consecutive Democratic terms in order to even run, and he will be completely irrelevant by that time period. In fact, Harris winning means that Newsom is probably going to have to run for Senate or do something like that in order to just have an office as a jumping off point in order to attempt to run in 2032, which again, he's never going to have the notoriety that he has now as California governor, who is the #1 surrogate for Joe Biden that he's built up this whole time. And that's really a disastrous situation for him. And Politico has taken note of this. Headline, Why Gavin Newsom Lost Star Surrogate Status Under Kamala Harris. And it says in the subheadline, more than a month after the shakeup, aka the coup, it's still unclear what role Harris has for Newsom, a longtime ally and sometimes rival of the fellow Californian. And it says for more than a year, Gavin Newsom was everywhere as a star surrogate for President Joe Biden, but since Kamala Harris took over as the nominee, you almost never see the California governor. Newsom spent little time campaigning in other states since his fellow Californian leaped to the top of the Democratic ticket, an abrupt shift after barnstorming the country for Biden, especially during his final few weeks of the candidacy. Now, this is 100% true. After Joe Biden's debate, Gavin Newsom was one of the politicians that was at the forefront of defending Joe Biden, saying that, hey, it's differences in style, making up every excuse under the sun, and this is because Gavin Newsom wanted Joe Biden to stay in the race because he doesn't care who wins in 2024, he's trying to win in 2028. Newsom's reduced role in the campaign has fueled parlor intrigue in Sacramento for weeks, as political insiders question the governor's status as a national surrogate and how his own potential future and presidential ambitions could be affected by Harris's rise. Nathan Click, a spokesperson for Newsom's political operation, said the governor is all in for Kamala Harris and dismissed any notion that his own presidential prospects could be a factor in his level of involvement. Listen, what do I always tell you guys about these particular politicians? They want to be president more than anything. And to understand this, I'll give you an example from the opposite coast, which of course is former governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo. Now, we all know about his scandals. We all know about the grandmothers in the nursing homes that should have gotten him forced out of office, and of course Letitia James basically forcing him out of office with a report on sexual harassment where the overwhelming majority of the allegations were ridiculous and absurd on its face, so that Letitia James could run for governor herself. Well, guess what? Andrew Cuomo has a history well before that, and usually he operated as a moderate Democrat. In fact, he built some weird alliance in the state house where he would use Democrats to team up with the Republicans in order to nerf the progressives, because he believed for a long period of time that being a progressive champion would hurt his future presidential prospects. But then, all of a sudden, before the George Floyd riots, but after the rise of Black Lives Matter, when criminal justice reform came in vogue, he started signing bills like bail reform. He started signing bills like less is more. A bunch of different various woke criminal justice policies were signed by Andrew Cuomo, who only a few years earlier would never even consider looking at those bills. This is what these guys do. They go with the flow. They try to build up their reputation. They're willing to destroy their own state. And for what reason? To advance themselves, their own presidential prospects. A perfect example of this is what we talked about with Prop 47. I did a whole video about how Gavin Newsom was fighting tooth and nail in order to keep a repeal of Prop 47, which did make it onto the ballot, by the way. It's Prop 36, away from the ballot. And the reason why he wanted to do that, when we look at the insider communications, is not because he cared oh so much about Prop 47, but because it was inextricably tied to his legacy, and it being repealed while he was in office would hurt his legacy. His staffers said it's okay to put it on the ballot in 2026, again, when Gavin Newsom would not be running for governor. So this guy champions this policy for over a decade in California, but behind the scenes, his staff is willing to sell it out as long as that sellout ends up occurring when he's leaving office, not in the middle of his second term.
Now, lawmakers, we know, are trying to add inoperability clauses to some bills that already are trying to crack down on retail theft and other crimes. But those clauses mean that if voters approve the initiative to reform Proposition 47, those proposed laws would not go into effect.
And by the way, it has not been unnoticed that Gavin Newsom has pulled back, and now the knives are coming out because there's a shift in power in California politics toward Harris away from Gavin Newsom. Get a load of this quote from a political consultant in Sacramento. Somebody who, by the way, if Newsom had got the nomination, would have jumped right on board with Gavin and be issuing nasty quotes about other people who were trying to question whether or not Gavin Newsom was the absolute best candidate. Quote, he was a uniquely good surrogate for Biden. Kamala Harris doesn't need the energy delivery as much right now, said Paul Mitchell, a Democratic consultant and Sacramento-based political data expert. Now again, you could say, hey, maybe there's some truth to that. Maybe there's some truth to the fact that Harris doesn't need the energy boost and she's not trying to align with all these different governors and candidates and people that are popular in the Democratic Party like Gavin Newsom, because she's good enough to stand on her own. I mean, she can't do an interview on her own, but her campaign is somehow good enough to stand on her own. But obviously, that is not the case. Again, look at the roster of people that Kamala Harris has acting as surrogates for her, and you'll understand what's going on. Harris has included more House members and senators, as well as battleground state leaders like Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan, who, as Politico previously reported, needed some prodding to get more involved with Biden. Other top Harris surrogates include governors like Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, Andy Beshear of Kentucky, who, unlike Newsom, were both part of the Veep stakes. Now again, we already went over why Gavin Newsom could not be a part of the Veep stakes, but of course, because he wants to be president someday, the only thing that you could offer him in order for him to get involved is something that will keep him around and relevant. And as the governor of California, the only thing that could actually be that upgrade for him is the VP nomination, which again, he was ineligible to get. Now you might be saying, Sean, you're speculating, and to be fair, a lot of this is speculation, but one of my favorite little anecdotes from this political article is the fact that California Governor Gavin Newsom was actually offered a decent speaking slot, not the best day, but it was on the first day of the DNC at 7 p.m., so pretty prime time, but he refused it because he said he wouldn't be able to make it to Chicago because he had a back-to-school event that morning. Again, that's not really a good excuse. He could have hopped on a flight after attending that morning event, which was a back-to-school event. Now, there could be a number of reasons why he didn't want that slot. Maybe he wanted to speak later because he thinks that's more ideal in the convention in terms of days. Or maybe, just maybe, he doesn't really want Kamala Harris to win because that will essentially torpedo his political ambitions. And again, what we've seen from these politicians repeatedly is the only thing they care about is their own political ambitions. Now, of course, I want to know what you guys think about this down in the comments below. As per usual, if you like the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social medias, support me in the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about Gavin Newsom rooting against Kamala. Till next time.